Hey everybody, I'm Goddess Intuition, and this is the Astrology of Death. So, a lot of people are afraid to cover this topic because it's so taboo. But because this is the month of October, and this is the month where the veil is the thinnest between the spiritual world and the natural world, I think that this is the best time ever to cover the taboo topic of the astrology of death. So, a lot of astrologers are a little bit hesitant or even afraid to get into this topic because of the fact that, well, if you're wrong about somebody's time of death, it's pretty obvious, all right? So, a lot of people won't cover death or the death of a person in their natal chart or with transiting planets until after the time of death has occurred. But we're going to get into some ways because I myself love taboo topics, and because this is the month of October, and at the end of October we do celebrate Halloween. All right, what better time to face a topic that a lot of people are very interested in but fear at the same time, which is the astrology of death. All right, so let's get into it. So there are three different major things that you need in order to look at someone's potential time of death, either before someone has died, if you're looking at someone who is still with us, or if you were looking at someone's chart who has already passed to understand their passing on a deeper level, all right? So those three things are the natal chart, which is the planetary positions at the time of the person's birth, or the progressive chart as well. So you'll need the natal chart, the progressive chart. And you don't have to use all three of these tools, but if you do have all three, it's very beneficial to being able to either understand windows of time that a person could pass or ways and reasons in which a person did pass, all right, if they're no longer with us. So you can also look at the progressive chart, all right? And the progressive chart is a chart similar to the natal chart, but it's a little bit different because for every year that a person is alive, is only one day in the progressive chart, all right? So when you're looking at a progressive chart, all right, it's a little bit different than a natal chart, and here's how. The natal chart deals with a person's natural disposition, all right, and events or occurrences that they're more than likely to find themselves in, okay? So if you are the actor, your natal chart is the play, all right? And it is the scenes that you'll probably find yourself in throughout your life, okay? The circumstances that you're more than likely to be in and how you approach those circumstances. So with the progressive chart, it gets a little bit more into the head of the person, all right, and how they think, what they're going through, what their mindset is, and what their personal life experience is. It's almost like being able to see that person's life experience through their eyes, where a natal chart is a little bit more objective and impersonal, okay? So with the progressive chart, you're going to be looking at the life experiences that that person had during that point in time in their life, all right? So if a person's natal sun is in Aquarius, but in the progressive chart, their sun is in Capricorn, what it's going to show is that they were very focused on their career, on being well known in their community or society, and how they wanted to be seen, represented, what they wanted their career to be about, or what they wanted their natural reputation to be in this world, okay? So it really gives you some deep insight onto a person and who they really are at their core based on what they're going through at that time in their life. Another thing that you really want to look at, especially when it comes to circumstances and occurrences during a certain time in someone's life, is of course the transits at the time of their life experience. So if someone's already passed, I would make sure that you look at the transits that happened from a month before they passed into the time of their passing. If you're looking at potential times that a person may pass, what you want to look at is, the transits throughout their life, okay? All the way from birth or from the time, the age that they are now to 100 years old, okay? Which of course is a long time, but when you're looking at a natal chart, when you're looking at the astrology of death, what you're really looking at, because we all have free will, we have free will of choice, okay? So because of that, there is a very small chance that you're going to be able to calculate exactly how and when a person is going to die. So you may not know that they're going to die of a heart attack while eating a grilled cheese at 62 years old in their house, okay? But there are going to be certain instances, certain windows of opportunity where you'll be able to, pinpoint certain instances where certain events may happen. So although death is a scary topic, I'd like to remind you that it's pretty much like looking at any other incident or any other time of opportunity, any other window of opportunity within someone's life, okay? So when you're looking at when someone may find love, there are certain opportunities within a natal chart, within the transits in the heavens, that offer a window of opportunity as to when a person is more than likely to find love, okay? And depending on certain transits, you'll be more likely to find love during certain times or certain periods of your life or certain life experiences than others, okay? And it works the same way for death or anything else in your natal chart. There are going to be certain times when you're more than likely to transition or where you have a possibility of being able to transition versus others, okay? So this is why it's very difficult to actually predict a certain specific time of death. Now, if there are certain very tight specific transits, it is possible for an astrologer to go, okay, well, this is more than likely when a person is going to pass, or they more than likely, died from this and this, okay? But because of the fact that it's also based on personal choice and our life experience is based on personal choices as well, what we can do in astrology is look at certain instances, certain windows of time and opportunities where a person is more than likely to have certain life experiences within their time here on this earth, all right? So when you're looking at the astrology of death, what you're really looking for is windows of opportunity or points in time when a person is more than likely or most likely to experience this transition from one life to the next, all right? So when it comes to the transits in the chart, transits, what they do for us when we look at someone's natal chart and then we compare it to the transits in the heavens during certain times in their life, is it tells us what that person might be going through, okay? So for instance, if you have a transit of, say, your rising sign is Aquarius and you have Uranus in your first house as well, okay, you're going to be a very unique individual. You probably don't care a lot about what other people think of you. You march to the beat of your own drum, and people are going to see you as a little bit unpredictable, okay? So if Mars then transits your first house, you may publicly, because the first house is a house of how you were seen, it's a house that's out in the open. But Mars transits here, it's going to be, a planet that renders action, because it's the planet of Mars, which is the planet of action, all right? And there may be actions that you take that are seen in the public, this being your first house, the house of how you're seen, the house that often renders itself to how the public perceives you, okay? There may be actions that you take that may be very rash, or there may be things that happen to you out in the open that could be very unpredictable. This is a transit with Mars. If it's in your first house, if it's conjunct Uranus, or if it's say you have Uranus in Aquarius, and then you have Mars squaring Aquarius in, say, the sign of Virgo, all right? This could cause accidents to occur, because Mars squaring Uranus is an accident-prone transit, all right? So when you have a transit like this, this is an incident, or an instance rather, where accidents are prone to occur, where things could go wrong, where you could make rash actions that could have rather harsh consequences or unpredictable consequences, all right? So you want to look at the transits in the chart as well as the effect that they have on your natural natal positions, or on the natural natal positions of the person that you are looking at as far as their chart. And I'd like to remind you again that, it also is based on a person's natural free will and their own free, will of choices, the choices they decide to make, whether or not the transition will occur, okay? So another thing that you want to look at, going back to the natal chart, are certain houses within the natal chart that could indicate passing or that could indicate death. A lot of times when you go into the natal chart and you look at possible ways that a person might pass, what you're really looking at are certain scenes, certain settings. Just like every house is literally called a house in astrology, it's as if your natal chart is a big mansion, all right? And every house is a different room, all right? And each room is set up differently. So within each room, certain things are happening, all right? Your first house, that's how you're seen, okay? So you could say that walking into your front door, this is the first room that people see. This is the living room, all right? This is the foyer. This is, the house where people naturally are able to see. Maybe if you have a big house with big windows, this is the room that when people look into the windows of your house, they see first, all right? So when you look at the natal chart and you're looking for possible um, methods of death or possible ways in which a person might pass, you want to look at the 12th house, the 4th house, the 8th house, and I would argue even though this is not considered a house of death, or it's not, in typical astrology considered a house that you look at for death, I think that even the first house is a house that you definitely want to look at, because when it comes to certain transits in the first house, this is a house that can indicate not only when a person might pass or how, but the things going on when they do pass. All right, we're going to get more into that in the next episode. So let's start with the 4th house. So ancient astrologers a lot of the time consider the 4th house to be the house of death. A lot of times now, in modern astrology, people consider the 8th house to be the house of death, all right? But we'll get into that a little bit later. So what I find a lot of times in astrology, in the study of people's charts, in the journey of people's life within their natal chart, when you look at the 4th house, the 4th house has to do with themes that you will find within a person's life experience from birth, the house that they grew up in, until death, all right? So for instance, if you have Chiron in the 1st house or in the 4th house, if a person has Chiron in the 4th house, all right? Chiron is an asteroid known for being the wounded healer, all right? So this is the asteroid that's going to show you where a person's wounded, where a person experiences hurt, but also tries to help others, all right? Because it's the wounded healer, all right? So when you have this in the 4th house, a person, because the 4th house is the house naturally where Cancer sits as well, this could lead to a person feeling vulnerable or feeling like a victim in certain situations throughout their life. This could have started from a trauma in childhood, all right? Being that the 4th house is also the house of the home and how you experience your home life, all the way until death, all right? So sometimes with people who have Chiron in the 4th house, they end up being a victim of some sort, okay? So this could indicate being a victim of a violent crime, a victim of a murder. People who are often seen with violent deaths where they're the victim have certain placements that are either Cancerian or a planet, an asteroid like Chiron in their 4th house, okay? So when you're looking at the 4th house, when it comes to transits, it can often show you ways in which or how a person felt. Again, the 4th house being the house that Chiron sits in, all right, when they passed. But it can also show you the state of being that they were in, all right? The 4th house being the house usually where Cancer would be, all right? It shows you the emotional state of being of a person during the time of their passing, a lot of the time, all right? If you do have certain planets here, or if the person whose chart you're looking at has certain planets here, all right, it could indicate what they were in pursuit of or what led to their death and how their death was perceived, all right? So again, if you have a planet like Chiron here, or if one has a planet like Chiron here, it could indicate that they felt like or they were a victim of some crime at the time of their death, like homicide, all right? For others, say there's another planet here like Jupiter. When you have Jupiter here in the 4th house, this could, especially if it's in a planet, say, like Cancer, or let's say it's in a planet like Aquarius, all right, they may have died in a unique way. And because Jupiter is here and Jupiter is the ruling planet of Sagittarius, they could end up with a death that is talked about overseas, or that is somehow well known or exposed to the public, okay? Because the fourth house tends to deal with themes that we carry throughout our life from the time that we arrive on this earth in this lifetime to the time that we leave. Okay, so now let's look at the eighth house. All right, now the eighth house is the house a lot of people consider to be the house of death. It's also the house of the occult and of money. All right, but most importantly, I think it's the house of transformation, and death is nothing but a transformation, all right, from the physical world to the next, or from what some people may believe to be from one lifetime to the next. All right. So when you're looking at the eighth house, when you're looking at death, what you're really looking at is, yes, it can sometimes mean, like say if Mars is in the eighth house, it can indicate a sudden death, it can indicate a violent death. But what you're really looking at, when you're looking at someone's eighth house, especially in their natal chart, is times of transformation and the ways in which someone typically transforms within their life. So if someone has the moon here, a person is constantly transitioning in the way, or transforming the way they deal with their emotions, the way they deal with emotional energy, the way that they perceive emotional things that happen to them. All right. So if someone has planets here in the eighth house, these are ways in which they typically transform within their life, and things that may occur during their transition. So, for instance, if someone has Venus here, all right, and they have Mars transiting their Venus, um, that transit can indicate that there could be something violent, something dramatic that happens. Say, like with a lover. So, this can indicate a crime of passion. It can indicate something that happens as a result of a love interest or a relationship in their life, all right, at the time of passing. However, I do want to remind you that not one house, not one transit, and not one aspect of a natal chart typically indicates exactly the way someone is going to die. So you have to look at the total chart. You have to look at transits as well as the natal chart. And then it's also very important to remember that free will is always, always, always the number one thing when it comes to, the occurrences in somebody's chart. And this is a big reason why a lot of people will not do astrological predictions around death until after someone's death, because of the fact that you can't necessarily predict. You can come close to it. You can look at tight aspects in someone's chart, and what I mean by tight aspects is, every single aspect in your chart, when you have something like, say, Sun conjunct Venus, all right, that's an aspect in your chart. And aspects have to do with certain degrees. So when something is to an exact degree, that's a tight aspect, okay? That means it's more likely to happen. It means it's more intense, okay? So when you have something intense in your chart, yes, it's more likely to happen, but realistically, there's always free will involved. So you always have a choice. And what I really think is great about the death of about astrology and the astrology of death is that one thing that it does is that it gives you the opportunity to be able to see, if you're doing a chart for someone who's living, windows of opportunity where you can avoid accidents, where you can avoid negative things, where you can avoid malefic incidents in your life or in the chart, okay? If you're doing a chart for someone who's already passed, what it can tell you is about their life journey and what it was that motivated them, as well as the choices that they made and what planetary aspects influenced them to make certain choices, all right? So, let's go to the last house, which is the 12th house. That can be very indicative of passing. Now, there are lots of other aspects, lots of other points in the chart, lots of other features within someone's natal chart that can indicate passing, such as the midheaven, okay, the imam koel, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's the fourth house again. Um, but those are points in the chart that, yes, they can indicate certain things about a person's life, as well as the descendant can also at times indicate passing or ways in which someone will pass. All right, but let's look at, for this video in particular, we're going to get more into the specifics in later videos. For this video, we're specifically going to look at the houses in the natal chart, just to give you an idea of where you can look, all right, when looking at death in astrology. So when it comes to the 12th house, I find this to be a very interesting house, much like the 8th house, because I feel like it's so little is understood about it. All right, a lot of people are scared of the 12th house. Now, the 12th house is the house where Pisces naturally sits, all right? And if any of you know any Pisces, you know they can be very dreamy, artistic individuals, all right? They can tend to daydream a lot, and it's usually because they're very spiritually inclined, whether they're aware of that or not, okay? So they can tend to go from this world, from this dimension to the next, like that, all right? That's why their imagination is so active, because their imagination is a different dimension, all right? So when you're looking at the 12th house, this is the last house in the zodiac chart wheel, in your natal chart wheel, all right? This is in many ways like the 8th house, a house of transition, all right? But instead of being a house that's taboo like the 8th house is, instead of being a house that's known for dark themes like the occult, the 12th house is considered a little bit foreboding. It's considered a little bit intimidating because of the fact that people interpret the 12th house as the house of undoing, okay? And in many ways, when you transition, when you're in a spiritual state of being, such as the 12th house naturally is, that house of Pisces, or naturally spiritually inclined, all right, you are taking the material, the physical world, and you're translating it into the spiritual. So the 12th house is naturally, you could argue, the most spiritual house of all the houses of the zodiac, all right? Some people consider this to be the house of self-undoing. So a lot of people who have, if you see a house, or if you see a chart where someone's committed suicide, a lot of times they will have certain planets within their 12th house, okay, such as Uranus, which is a planet that can indicate rash action, all right? Or they could even have Pluto here, which can indicate feeling overpowered, okay? However, one planetary position alone is not going to indicate something as serious as suicide or murder. It's going to be a combination of transits and of natural natal chart positions that is going to tell you exactly how a person is going to transition from one life to the next, all right, or from this world to the next. So when looking at the 12th house, what you're really looking at is things that a person is dealing with that may be hidden from the public eye as well, that may lead to their transition. So you could find here that a person is suffering from certain mental afflictions, all right, especially if they have, like, say, Uranus, or if they have Uranus in a water sign in this house, all right. You could see that a person is, a lot of people who are either murder victims, who have committed homicide, or who have committed suicide, do have certain planets within the 12th house as well. But they tend to also have other aspects. This can indicate a violent death, all right? So with the 12th house here, what it's really going to show you is some things, especially if it was an unexpected, a sudden, a violent death, if it was something that happened that no one expected, you're going to find those things in the 12th house. Now, in a natal chart, what the 12th house is going to show you is often the scene in which someone passes. So, for instance, if you have Taurus here in the 12th house, this could indicate a very comfortable passing at home, all right? Now, that doesn't tell you exactly what a person's going to die from. It could be old age, it could be a disease, it could be an affliction, it could be something, more sudden than that. But that's going to be indicated by other planets within the natal chart, as well as the transiting planets in the chart, all right? So Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. This is the Astrology of Death. I'm going to have some more videos coming for you guys soon, so make sure that you like this video and subscribe to this channel. And if you're interested in getting a natal chart from me, alright, I do synastry charts, natal charts, as well as other types of intuitive readings. So if you're interested in getting a reading from me, make sure that you do visit my website. The link is below. Also, make sure you follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. I have my links below as well. And I'll see you soon. Bye.